As the official healthcare provider of Minnesota United, Allina Health is dedicated to delivering pro-level care for our loons. But the partnership goes much deeper than what happens on the field. From our shared support of youth-focused nonprofits like Roots for the Home Team, to championing programs for adaptive athletes with the MNUFC Power Soccer Team, Allina Health and Minnesota United are committed to providing an altogether better experience for Loons fans. Learn more at allinahealth.org/loons. Welcome back to a very, very highly anticipated episode of the Sound of the Loons podcast brought to you by Allina Health. We are here with Minnesota's own Tyler Heaps, the sporting director and general manager for San Diego FC. Welcome to the program. Thank you so much for taking the time to sit in and have a chat with me.
Thanks for having me. Minnesota's still home, so always happy to do good things for that state.
Exactly. Let's dive in. So for those who don't know, your current role is in San Diego, but let's back up. About 33 years. I think are you 91? Are you my
34 age? Now? Yeah, 91.
You're 91. Yeah. So 34 years ago. So back to old 1991, life without telephones and social media. Give us a little bit of a background where you grew up, where you were born, and just kind of your family history here in Minnesota.
Yeah, born and raised in St. Paul, East St. Paul. I grew up just down the street from 3M, youngest of 5 to a single mom. So spent 22 years in Minnesota. Before packing my bags and heading to Chicago, and then ended up somehow in Monaco and now obviously here in San Diego. So did my whole obviously youth career in Minnesota. Went to high school at De La Salle in downtown Minneapolis, where all my brothers and sisters went as well, and still definitely call that place home just because of the connections I still have there. I've got 10 nieces and nephews in Minnesota, so they'll all be there in San Diego gear. And then have all my sisters as well in the neighboring suburbs of the Twin Cities.
That's awesome. Are you going to be back in town for the game? You coming in?
I'll come down to the game. My mom will be there. Lindsay's actually coming as well, so it'll be a family reunion. I think I've taken the whole away ticket allotment for this one from our team.
Priorities, right? Yeah, we got to work from the top down. That's awesome. So, and you obviously grew up here. Apparently, you are a quote unquote lifelong suffering Minnesota fan. We're not going to talk about the Loons, but Vikings, Wolves, you're in it.
I'm in it. We've got group text message chats for family and brothers and sisters. We suffered through all these Vikings defeats. We've suffered through all these Timberwolves. They always like to get your hopes up and then let you down slowly. But yeah, I was born in 91, so I think the last time, obviously the Twins won. But just grew up going and watching every single one of these games, checking the local newspaper to see what the score was, how many KG had on the night. So it's it definitely resonates. And even then, going back to the Minnesota Thunder days, I mean, I was there when I have early memories at Central High School watching Joe Warren play against Landon Donovan and San Jose Earthquakes in the Open Cup, and even just going and being a ball boy at the Hill Murray soccer games and Tartan soccer games. So it's I've got a lot of connections back there, and I owe a lot to my early years in those Minnesota days.
That's awesome, man. It's great. And I didn't expect anything less in terms of just being so proud of where you come from. That's something that, you know, from Pennsylvania, everyone's always really proud of where they come from. Don't get me wrong, but there's something very, very prideful about Minnesotans. Even, you know, we play our snow openers pretty much every single year, and it's packed. The commitment of the fan base is incredible. I haven't been to a Vikings game yet, but I don't even want to pay the $600 for nosebleed tickets. But the Minnesotans are extremely prideful of who they are, and you exemplify every single bit of that. And if I'm not mistaken, you were involved with Minnesota back in the early days, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, the earliest, NASL days for sure. So I grew up obviously on the east side, and I played for Minnesota Thunder Academy. Before that, it was Bangu Tsunami. And so our carpool was me, Eric Miller, and Brent Coleman. We were the only ones that came from the east side. So Brent and I and the whole Coleman family go way back in terms of making sure they could come pick me up and we could get over to Bloomington for training and things like that. And And then, I played for Minnesota United Reserves when Peter Rivard was the head coach. That was the time whenever obviously Christian Ramirez, those guys were on the team. And so it's always great to see them after games now. And again, you almost resonate back to what those days were, where soccer was what it was, but it was also fantastic going out to Blaine and seeing some of those games, playing in the USA Cup. All that stuff still sits with me to this day. And it's fun now to see my nieces and nephews go through that. They're now playing in the USA Cup and they're in some of these these tournaments that I had the opportunity to play in and be involved in.
That's awesome. Yeah, I spoke my first year here, and I didn't realize it was the biggest youth tournament in the world.
Yeah.
In terms of the amount of kids, I was up there on a stage, and the Carly Rae Jepsen, the one who sings like "The Sprite," and I was opening up for it, which is a terrible opening act. But yeah, I didn't realize it was the biggest youth tournament in the world, and pretty much the mecca for like youth soccer at that point. And then to now fast forward to have, go through the NASL days. It's funny you bring up Eric and Brent, longtime guys, Eric in Portland now. But yeah, you've been through a little bit of the early days of Minnesota. And then from there you transferred and worked over to US Soccer. Can you kind of talk about your path going from Minnesota out to US Soccer and then what that, what your role looked like there?
Yeah, so obviously I went to Augsburg University in downtown Minneapolis, and so Greg Holker was my club coach, and so I actually went to Chicago as a freshman, and then quickly transferred back as a few of our club team did, and I wanted to be closer home so my mom could watch me play more, just because I felt a bit bad and guilty that she couldn't see me play in college. I never expected to probably be at the highest level, but I always was an okay player. And then when I graduated, I went to school for math and computer science, so I actually started in finance. That was at the time when I was playing for the reserves at Minnesota United. I was coaching the 9s through 12s at Minnesota Thunder Academy, and I was coaching at St. Kate's University for the women's program. And so was just trying to stay involved in the game as much as possible, but I also knew I needed to pay back some student loans and start to figure out what my life looked like, which is why I went into finance. And then one thing led to the other, and I saw a job one day on LinkedIn for US Soccer, and so I reached out and was fortunate enough to kind of be in the timing of when data and soccer started to kind of mesh. And so I knew a lot what was going on in the industry. I'd done some projects. And so I interviewed with Jay Berhalter at the time, who was obviously my boss at US Soccer. And he brought me in, and there it was just about trying to make connections and trying to be a useful resource for people. So I was fortunate enough to get connected to Jill Ellis and start working with her, and then Don Scott on the performance side, and then Bruce Arena. And then one thing led to the other, and I was traveling full time with Greg and his staff. And so just trying to build out that analytics and analysis department, which was a team of 1 when I joined, and ended up being a team of 10 plus that now is doing extremely well for the federation and supporting every youth national team and senior national team. And so I spent 6 years there. COVID hit, and then I was fortunate enough, I got to travel a lot with the national teams. And so I would go and meet with clubs and try to figure out what they were doing and how they were running and their operations. And had the fortunate to run into Paul Mitchell at Tottenham. And then he gave me a call when COVID hit and said, "Hey, I'm going from Red Bull to Monaco. Do you want to join?" So I quickly Googled Monaco, and I said, "It doesn't look too bad. I think I'll do that." So I packed my bags during COVID and moved to Monaco, and was fortunate enough to be thrown into the wind there at a very successful club that does a lot of things really well, and got to work for 2 of probably the highest regarded sporting directors in the world, and Paul and Lawrence Stewart. And luckily got to learn a lot, and one thing led to the other, and I ended up joining Right to Dream and now San Diego.
Hot damn.
It's a crazy story from East St. Paul, Minnesota to Monaco, but
it's incredible. Yeah, I mean, you got the Formula One race, hanging out. You're on a yacht. Yeah. A little different than boat life in Lake Minnetonka, but still exactly. similar vibes. But so let's back up. I mean, we got to touch on a few different things before we get to San Diego. So do you think your combination of player data analytics and kind of the way that was moving was this perfect kind of timing / meshing of personalities to put you in a position to be successful with US Soccer? Because data wasn't as much of a thing. It was like, oh, I saw this guy play. He used to be really good. You should give him a look. And they watch 1 or 2 games in person. They sign someone. But now things are so data driven, but you also have the playing side. So you're not just some book nerd that kind of knows what numbers to kind of look at and analyze. You can kind of have both sides. That's something where you felt that gave you a leg up maybe on other people.
That's exactly it. I think the timing was perfect. Like I owe a lot to the timing, and then also to just trying to stay involved in the game as much as possible. Like I was in finance, right? And I probably could have went and had a very successful career in finance, but I still had this itch to be involved and try to push the game forward as much as possible. So I would go in the morning. I'd arrive at 6 a.m. I would work out. I would go and work my finance job until 2. I would leave. I'd go coach the 9s through 12s. Then I'd go to St. Kate's from 4:30 to 6, and then I'd go to the reserve practice in the evening. But that was what I just wanted to do. I wanted to stay involved in the game as much as possible. So when an opportunity came, I was prepared for it. And I think the U.S. soccer one was fantastic because I just was involved in everything. I got to see how the federation was run. I got to work with 20 coaches at once, which is such a blessing and learning experience because you get to hear about how people see football. And I was kind of a nerd for the game. So I just wanted to try to learn how people saw football, what their priorities were, and so forth. So that, again, when I got the opportunity to hire a head coach, I knew what I was looking for. And so just trying to use all those past experiences to make sure I was continuing to not only use data and analytics, and I don't talk about being, that's the only way. I talk about being more efficient and obviously trying to be effective in terms of our decision making. So I see data as another employee. It's someone sitting in an empty chair that's telling you something, and whether you believe it or not, or whether you want to use it to answer questions or ask questions, it's all about how you utilize that to make decisions. And efficiency speaks for itself. I think you can use data to save a lot of time in terms of how you recruit, in terms of how you return to play strategy, in terms of periodization and everything else that goes with it. So just trying to look at all of that stuff and make better decisions, just as I do with other decisions in life.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's extremely well put because as you see, like AI and all this stuff is really becoming such a prominent force in business, right? Whether it's Minnesota, San Diego, whether you're in Monaco, US soccer, where you can kind of use these things as a tool and a resource to amplify and kind of figure it out, or you can kind of use it as a crutch where it's like, oh, we're just going to let this computer spit out these numbers and we'll just go this way. So I think you're really touching on a point where you're blending the best of both worlds and kind of trying to use these points as a tool to now also, rely on the fact that you also were a player. You also kind of maybe a little bit of an eye for what you like and what you don't like. And then, so now we're in France, obviously, Formula One, you're hanging out in Monaco, life's like there. Take us into just what your time was like in France, what you learned, and just how you grew again, being so young, how you were growing and learning, being in a place where you didn't know the language, where it's not home, where it's just not even the same country, a different vibe. What did you take from your time in France?
Yeah, I think I grew a lot personally and professionally when I was there. Obviously you get homesick. You're very far away. The time difference is obviously a lot. I wasn't even in the same continent or time zone as my then girlfriend, my now wife. And I didn't get to see my family, and we're very family oriented in terms of how we grew up and so forth. And so it was definitely it took a while, but it was probably what I needed at the time. I needed to step out of my comfort zone, and I needed to go learn from quote unquote the best there is. I think Monaco speaks for itself in terms of the track record of player development and player sales and so forth. And so just to be able to go dive in and see how they do it, and be able to be in a situation where you're part of the decision-making process to buy a player for 20 million and then sell them for 50, like that right there is stress, right? And so to be involved and to see what that is straight away, I think kind of got thrown to the wolves, but I was in a fortunate role where I got to be integrated between recruitment, analysis, and human performance. So when I look at my job today, both the Federation and Monaco helped me because it wasn't like I was only integrated in one. So I don't consider myself really an expert in any of those, but I really know how they're trying to work and how I can help them be successful. And so it helped me transition into a role like this. It helped me hire 35 new staff members here as we were an expansion side. And so just to be really clear about what we were trying to do, the strategy behind it, and I learned every day, and I'm still learning every day. And I think that's the glory about this industry, is that there's no blueprint of this is how you got to do it. You're able to do it your way, but you're also able to set the strategy about how you want people to follow along on the same road.
So were you doing this all in French? I imagine, I imagine so. Or was there a buffer where you kind of were learning it? But that's, to operate at such a high level, high stress, like big time environment, like in a different language is not easy. Was it in French?
So Monaco is very international. So my day-to-day work was in English, but obviously you pick it up, and you definitely, our coach at the time was Croatian. So he was coaching in English with a French translator. And then my boss at the time was English as well. So my day-to-day work was in English, but obviously you pick up the language in terms of how you communicate. And it also adds just more stress, right? Because you go talk to an analyst, and the analyst probably doesn't know very good English. And so you just need to figure out what and how you can work and collaborate with them. And that's also our job today, right? We're in the most diverse league in the world. And so you got guys in every locker room. And I think I learned as much as I did about football and player sales as I did about human beings, because the French are completely different than the Americans, than the than some of the other players. And so I think that again was probably what I needed at the time. I needed to go and see how all those other areas were working, and how to really challenge myself to think and to lead and manage.
At Target, we're ready to cheer with the hometown fans and gear you up for an epic season. Whether watching from the stands or your living room, score big on game day with everything you need for the win. We're here to be your home field advantage at Target and Target.com. That's. I couldn't imagine doing that at a younger age, right? I mean, if it was like, oh, I'm 45, I feel like I'm good. What age were you when you were doing this? Like 25?
I moved when I was 29, 28,
okay.
29.
Okay, so you're still not you're still young in the grand scheme of things, but that's still. It's still just fascinating that you're able to go through all that and learn and just kind of learn how to navigate that, which obviously was setting the scene for you now. Going back to San Diego going to San Diego and then taking a larger role where now you're having to obviously look down. And as you were saying, build out a staff, build out departments, build out a roster. So was it the plan always to come back to the States, or was this something that fell into your lap? Or to talk about the transition now to get to San Diego?
I probably never wanted to come back, and I don't say that in a mean way. But I think I consider myself like very relaxed. I don't show a lot of emotion. So Europe's like perfect for me, especially a city like Monaco and Lyon, where everybody's just kind of going through the flow. No one really, there's no egos because everybody's probably more successful than me in a place like that. So at the time when I was at Monaco, obviously you can only live there for so long. At least that's my opinion, because it's not real life. And so I was looking obviously at other opportunities, and I got connected to Tom Vernon, who was the owner of Right to Dream. And he had known that I was looking in other places, and he said, hey, before you go anywhere else, hear me out. And I, obviously my fiance at the time and now wife, was playing in Lyon. And so I wanted to get to a point where I was able to support her more in her career. And so he said, look, you can work remote. We have an expansion team coming. I don't know what the role is going to be, but you can be involved in it. But I want you involved in Right to Dream Global as a group. So they have an academy in West Africa. They have an academy in Egypt and obviously ONFC Nordsjælland up in Denmark. And so I moved to Lyon and obviously was on the road a little bit, but it just gave me the ability to go support Lindsay and what she was trying to do. Obviously, she's one of the most successful players in the world. And so I wanted to see her play more and more. And I felt, again, guilty that I wasn't able to do that because when you get involved in a club, you have no time. The schedule quickly takes up your entire time. And while we were a 4-hour car ride away, I wanted to be able to obviously experience that with her and feel what this and be able to support her. And so I moved there and got really ingrained with the ownership group, with the Mansours, obviously the owners of Right to Dream, and just started to be involved in more and more in terms of, okay, what's our strategy for roster building? What's our strategy for DPs and U22s and everything else? And had a lot of knowledge of MLS, but never worked in it directly. So I was trying to ramp myself up at the same time. And with relationships and with trust comes one thing to another. And so there was one day when I remember I went to London to meet with Lutfi and the board, and they were kind of like, hey, the interim job is yours. Go run with it and see what you can do. And I'm like, okay, well, can I still live in Lyon? And they said, yeah, you can still live in Lyon. And then one thing and the other, I remember on a call with Tom Penn, and one day he's like, well, when are you moving to San Diego? And I'm like, do I have to, type of thing? And I know that sounds harsh, right? You moving to San Diego, everybody's probably like, oh, but
you talked about living a fake life in Monaco and you're moving to San Diego as if you suddenly were like, oh, this is such a downgrade.
Exactly. So, and eventually it just was, hey, you're perfect for the job. We want you to do the job and to lead this. And so then I moved in July of 2024. And then my first task was obviously the head coach and hiring out the rest of the staff. We had already had a pretty good start on players in terms of what we were looking for and how we were trying to do it. And so had a pretty good involvement in terms of hiring all 35 of the staff, at least involved in the process for all of it. And then signing 26 of the players that we have today. So it was a whirlwind. It was learning every single day. It was making mistakes. It was, but we're fortunate. We're fortunate in that we're a part of a bigger organization in Right to Dream. And so we have player profiles, we have a style of play. And so, and it's something that I believe wholeheartedly in terms of how football should look and how clubs should operate in terms of sustainability. And so, I had a lot of the blueprint already, and it was more about making sure that it could translate to MLS and then making sure we got the right people to do it. And we've been fortunate to build out a really good staff.
Yeah, and I think it's hard to argue with the results. And obviously, we're in results based business, and things can change on a whim. You know how it is, right? I think you can go through ups and downs, and every club is bound to go through some ups and downs. But what a start you guys have had! And really quickly for the viewers who don't know, the Right to Dream program. Can you kind of dive in a little bit into exactly what the elevator pitch would that be, so they have a little bit of context into what you're talking about?
Yeah, 25 plus years, started in West Africa as a Ghanaian academy. Started because our owner, Tom Vernon, was down there, and obviously the children that he had adopted wanted to play on a football team, and they didn't have one, an organized one. And so he created Right to Dream Academy. His then partner at the time taught English and was the school component, and he was the football coach. And so they've now grown to be, in my opinion, the most successful academy in the world. And have been fortunate to have players representing the countries at the World Cup and playing in the Premier League at the highest level. And so we are a football academy, a student athlete academy, one that obviously commit to the kid from a schooling standpoint as well as a football standpoint. So now have grown and grown to Egypt as well as Scandinavia with FC Nordsjælland, and now developing the academy here, which our first class will begin in 2 months, where obviously we'll have Mexican and Americans coming here and living full-time residential, as well as being in character development and school development and getting to play football. And so it's really about the holistic person, making sure that we prepare them for what's next, whether that's football or whether that's something else. So it's something that really hit home to me. Obviously, everything is fully funded by ownership. It's a nonprofit, so everything that we make goes back into the organization. The way I grew up, again, working at the Metrodome to be able to pay off my Bangu Tsunami fees and things like that, it really resonated with me. And I think that's why a lot of people want to join this project. It's much more than just football. And you've been in the sport long enough. Values aren't always at the top of every organization's mind. And I think that's what really drew me to this. So when you asked the question, did you want to come back? No, I didn't see myself coming back to MLS because I didn't really have an actual connection to any club, probably outside of Minnesota, because of my connection to that state and what they're able to do. But then this thing came along, and it was about much more than football. And so it's one that now I owe a lot to the ownership group for taking a chance on me, but it's also what this group is all about.
That's awesome. And I think it goes without saying the incredible things that you guys are doing out around the world, because to provide opportunities like that. And I was on a podcast recently talking about how the small percentage of players that actually become professionals, right? That actually go to the highest level, that go from college to the pros. I think it's like 1%. You see the advertisement all the time during college sports. But for you to now make good people that make good decisions that impact the communities well, puts a bigger, impact on the San Diego community, on the Minneapolis, St. Paul community. So those types of things, as I'm kind of getting involved more in the organization, are becoming more important to me. And I value that your club's doing that. I know Minnesota here, we're doing that as well. And what's it like, as someone who holds the record, tied for the most times picked up in an expansion draft? I was hoping you guys would take me, because then I would actually break the record. So I would have just retired anyway, but at least if I got picked, that would have been third, or that would have been my third time. So I was hoping there was a 1% of me that wanted to just get picked to hold that. But I call myself the greatest side piece in MLS history, because I wasn't good enough to protect in those ones, but I was good enough to maybe have for a team.
Yeah.
But building out a team, there's so much that goes into it. Where's the starting point? I mean, is it the coach? Is it the facility? Is it, you talk to management? Is it your style of play? Like, it's like a blank FIFA team that you're just kind of building out.
Yeah, and the rules make it even more complicated. But no, it started with a whiteboard and ended with the whiteboard. And I think a lot of the names that we had on there originally, we never were able to accomplish. But it just goes back, I think, holistically to the strategy of the club or the group or the organization. We knew how we wanted to play football, right? So immediately, a lot of the player pool starts to dwindle down, and in terms of what we're trying to find in a right back or a center back or a goalkeeper, for example. And so. And every decision that you make impacts the next one, especially in this league where roster rules and salary cap is so apparent. So, look, our first signing obviously was actually the local goalkeeper here, which showed our strategy right away. We signed 17-year-old Duran Ferre and have since put him on loan at our club in FC Nordsjælland, and now he'll come back and join us after this window. And so that kind of showed a statement of intent there of that we're going to commit to this community and the youth that obviously this community has been able to produce. And then we went out and got Irving Lozano, and then we were able to bring in 2 players that have played in our system and our style, and Jeppe Tverskov and Marcus Ingridson. And so when you start making those pieces, you start to fill out your depth chart, and you're like, okay, now what else do we need? Okay, we need MLS experience. So we went and got a guy like Ima Boateng and Annabelle Godoy, right? So we were trying to check all those boxes, and we never said we want to sign the 26 best players, because that's not what makes a successful team, because we're also building a culture from scratch. So we needed to get guys like Godoy and Ima in that understand what this league is. It's the most unique league in the world, and the travel schedule is brutal. And what you have to do to be successful in this league is different than the rest of the world. And so we were very strategic in terms of how we brought people in. We tried to bring in good people. We tried to bring in people with growth mindsets, and we tried to bring in people that we thought could play football the way we wanted to. And we've been fortunate. We've had a lot of success. We'll obviously be missing a few people, which is also a credit to the staff and the players. We had 7 internationals this window. We've got 2 guys that will be in Gold Cup. And so as do you guys, and again, it just goes to the credit of what you're able to build. And so it's almost next man up mentality, and it's plug and play, and making sure that style can still operate no matter what the name is on the back of the jersey. And so, yeah, we've had a lot of success so far, but you mentioned it's a long season. We lost 3 games in a row, and that's probably been my proudest moment so far. Of the culture didn't change in those 3 losses, and we were able to rebound now and go on a nice little run to the month of May, but it only gets more challenging from here playing to the summer.
So, I mean, for the viewers, Nordsjælland is in Denmark, and they have a very, very distinct style of play. Is that something that you watched? And my buddy Patrice Bernier played there back in the day. Is that something that you watched and you were like, this is what? Because again, this is probably, I would say, if fans are going to, and we'll fast forward into this weekend, we play you guys, probably, I think, 2 teams with arguably some of the strongest identities at this point in MLS. And is that something where you looked at this and was it a management thing, or is this a you thing, or collective, like this is how we want to play, or how was the style of play decided? Because again, there's such a clear identity, and I credit to you guys for, I played on teams where it's, well, what do we do this at times, and we kind of do this at times. We do a lot of everything, but almost too much of nothing. So is that just like from top down, or how does that philosophy develop?
Well, what I'll say first is that 2 distinct styles and 2 opposite. This weekend we polar opposites, which I'm really excited for, to be honest. And it's what this league, I think, needs more of, is teams that are totally committed to what they're doing. And I think both us and obviously you guys in Minnesota are totally committed to what we're doing. And I think, and we've both proven that you can win in either way. And I think that's why everybody loves this sport, right? Is that there's different ways to win. Red Bull do differently than City Football Group, than do differently than FC Nordsjælland, for example. And so it's something that I wanted to join the organization because this is how I think football should be played. I think it's about entertainment, right? And as much as everybody wants to win and we want to win every single game, there are different ways you can win, but I want to entertain. And I want people, obviously, that can be able to operate under stress and pressure and take risk and everything else that comes with it. And so when I joined the organization, I was committed to this way of football. And so that's the first thing that's important, is alignment. That means we hired a head coach that was also extremely aligned. And I think we got that in Mikey. And I think there were some questions asked whenever we did hire Mikey, in terms of, he's never been a head coach in MLS. But when I got done in every conversation with Mikey, I was excited because we think very similarly. We think we have very high standards, and we think very similarly about the game. And that's the easiest part of my job, is that I don't need to go to him and say, hey, what are you going to say to the media today? Like, let's make sure we're aligned, because I know, and having worked with him so far in the last 9-10 months, that we are totally aligned in terms of how we see football. And so it's something that starts at the ownership level, that went to FC Nordsjælland, that now is part of the group DNA, and now is part of the San Diego DNA. You'll see it in our academy teams. Our academy teams now, we've hired coaches that also are totally committed to this way. And again, you talk about success, but we're really keen on sustainability and making sure that we can continue to do it over a long period of time. And so getting people that are all aligned in the same way of life is what you need to do. And getting people on that same road where there's still enough for creativity. And look, MLS is a different league, so we've adapted our style of play a bit, but the main principles are the same. And it's one, hopefully, that the Minnesota fans will see in the weekend. And whatever way the game goes, look, if there's more set pieces and there's more transition moments, Minnesota will be successful. If there's less set pieces and more controlled moments, we'll be more successful. But that's, I think, what the viewers can go into this game and really know what you're going to see. I met with an MLS executive a few years ago, and he said, yeah, we play completely different home and away. And I remember walking out of that meeting being like, how can you train day in and day out and have the players totally committed to what you're trying to do if that's your philosophy day to day? And what I love about Mikey is he talks about, we're totally committed and we'll be brave home and away. And we went to the Galaxy in the opening game, and people will probably, it surprised a lot of people. It didn't surprise anybody internally, because we've been talking about it the entire preseason. And that was something that we were always going to do, and hopefully we'll do this weekend.
Well, that was that's a great recap and a great, I would say, foreshadowing in terms of what the game's going to be. I know as a player, all I wanted was a clear message from the coach, and to be able to have a message home, away, whether we play on Mars, whether we play in Monaco, or whether we play in Minnesota, that always provided me the best and most confidence to go out there and try to execute my job. And it seems like you're doing that in San Diego. And I first off just want to say thank you so much for sitting on the pod. We went a little bit longer, but again, maybe we'll make a little bit of an exception for you, being successful and coming from your home state. We really appreciate you taking the time, and you've built such an incredible foundation there in San Diego from what it looks like. So you're making Minnesotans very proud of what you're doing there. And obviously we're halfway into the season, so hopefully we'll wish you all the success going forward. Maybe not against us this weekend, but all the success going forward. But again, thank you so much for taking the time to join me on the Sound and Loons, brought to you by Line Health. Hopefully maybe you'll come back, maybe later in the season we'll do this one more time. Who knows? Yeah. We'll see.
Awesome. I appreciate you having me. Look, Minnesota's still home to me. I'm looking forward to getting there, seeing my family, having my family there in the stadium. Looking forward to coming to Allianz. They've done a fantastic job in terms of getting that place fired up, and I'm looking forward to going to my favorite breweries and my favorite coffee shops that I miss from Minnesota. So looking forward to it all.
There you go. It's going to be a great match. But if not, check it out on Saturday. It's going to be, two top of the West teams. Should be a lot of fun one. Thanks a lot for joining me. Appreciate it. Thank you so much.